Hi basketball fans, welcome back to the channel. Raven Johnson is under fire again, and this time the backlash may be even uglier than before. Just weeks after being drafted by the Indiana Fever and publicly showing love to Caitlin Clark, Raven Johnson found herself at the center of another online firestorm, one that exposed just how toxic the women's basketball discourse has become. What should have been a feel-good moment, two former rivals becoming teammates, quickly turned into chaos. Because instead of celebrating Raven's arrival in Indiana, some fans turned on her. And according to the broader reaction online, some of the attacks crossed way beyond basketball criticism into deeply racist and degrading territory, reigniting conversations about the abuse players face in the sport. Johnson has previously spoken publicly about the racist harassment she received after the viral 2023 Final Four moment against Caitlin Clark, saying she was called names including racist slurs and that the experience made her want to quit basketball. Now the question everyone is asking is, why is Raven Johnson being attacked for supporting her own team? And how did this become another flashpoint in the never-ending Caitlin Clark versus Angel Reese culture war? Because some Raven Johnson praising Caitlin Clark has become controversial. And for many fans, that says everything about where women's basketball is right now. Before we break this all down, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and comment below. Do you think women's basketball fan culture has gotten too toxic? Let's get into it. When Reese selected 10th overall by the Indiana Fever in the 2026 WNBA draft, it instantly became one of the most talked about picks of the night. Not because she wasn't talented, not because she didn't deserve it, but because of who she was joining. Caitlin Clark. The same Caitlin Clark who once waved Raven off in the 2023 Final Four in one of the most viral moments in women's college basketball history. That clip became Clark backing away from Raven beyond the arc, daring her to shoot, then turning away and literally waving her off. It was competitive. It was disrespectful. It was unforgettable. And for Raven, it changed her life. Because the internet took that moment and ran. Raven later admitted that the backlash she received after that game nearly broke her mentally. She said the online abuse was so severe she considered quitting basketball entirely. That's how brutal things got. Drafted Raven. Fans immediately wondered, would there be tension? Would there be awkwardness? Would Raven secretly resent Caitlin? Would this old rivalry explode inside the locker room? But Raven shut all of that down immediately. When asked which Fever player she was most excited to play with, she didn't hesitate. Caitlin Clark. Caitlin Clark. Then she doubled down, calling Clark a phenomenal player, praising her shooting, praising her leadership, praising her winning mentality. Raven made it crystal clear. There is no beef between her and Caitlin Clark. She respects a lot. That should have ended the conversation. But instead, it triggered another wave of controversy. Because some fans, especially the most tribal corners of social media, did not want to hear. To them, Raven Johnson was supposed to hate Caitlin Clark forever. She was supposed to represent the anti-Clarks. She was supposed to fit neatly into the manufactured rivalry narratives people have built around women's basketball. But Raven refused to play that game. And that made certain people furious. Online reaction exploded. Some attacked Raven for switching sides. Others accused her of chasing attention. And many observers noted the rhetoric quickly escalated into deeply personal and ugly territory, echoing the kind of abuse Johnson has described facing before. That's when the conversation got bigger than Raven Johnson. Because it reflects a growing problem in women's basketball. Fans are no longer just debating basketball. They're turning players into symbols, choosing sides, creating camp, demanding loyalty, and punishing any athlete who doesn't fit their narrative. Nowhere is that more obvious than in the endless Caitlin Clark versus Angel Reese discourse. For nearly 3 years, those two stars have been at the center of the biggest rivalry conversation in basketball. And whether they ask for it or not, everyone around them gets pulled into. Teammates, former teammates, coaches, friends, media members, even when they say nothing. That's where Dawn Staley enters this conversation. Because Raven Johnson is one of Dawn Staley's most beloved former players. She came up under one of the most respected coaches in basketball. Won championships at South Carolina. Developed into one of the best defensive guards in the country. And represented the Gamecock culture so naturally. Some fans tried to connect Raven's praise of Caitlin Clark to Dawn Staley. They began speculating. Does Dawn approve? What does this mean for South Carolina players? How does Angel Reese feel? Is there tension between that circle and Caitlyn support? But here's the reality. Most of that is fan-created drama. There is no confirmed feud here. No verified beef between Raven Johnson and Angel Reese. No public evidence of conflict involving Dawn Staley over Raven praising Clark. What exists is fan project. People taking every compliment, every interaction, every social media post, and trying to force it into rivalry because drama gets clipped. But beneath the manufactured narratives is a much more interesting truth. Elite competitors often respect each other deep. Raven Johnson knows firsthand how great Caitlyn Clark is. She had to guard her. She lost to her. She beat her. She studied. She battled her on the biggest stages in college basketball. So when Raven praises Caitlyn, that isn't betrayal. That's basketball respect. And frankly, it also shows maturity. A lot of athletes can separate competition from personal animosity. Fans often can't. That's the disconnect. Raven is doing what pros do. Moving on. Joining forces. Trying to win. Because the Indiana Fever didn't draft her for internet narrative. They drafted her because she fit. Fever coach Stephanie White has already praised Raven's versatility and defensive ability, and analysts have pointed to her as a strong complementary piece next to Clark in the. She gives Indiana elite perimeter defense, point of attack pressure, another playmaker, a guard who can let Clark work off ball more often, and perhaps most important, a competitor who understands what. This isn't some publicity pitch. This is basketball strategy. And early signs suggest the chemistry between Clark and Raven is already built. Training camp clips have shown Raven visibly hyped celebrating Clark's shots and engaging with teammates. She's also publicly said Clark has been helping her learn the Fever system and terminology. That doesn't look like beef. That looks like teammates. Which makes the backlash even more absurd. Because people are attacking a rookie for supporting her team. That should be normal. Instead, it became controversial. And it raises a bigger. Has fandom in women's basketball become too parasocial? Too invested in off-court narrative? Because players can compete fiercely. Respect each other. Become teammates. Move on. While fans stay stuck in old grudges for. That's what Raven Johnson is experiencing. She has evolved beyond the 2023 moment. Many fans have. They still define her by one viral. Still treat her like the girl Caitlyn waved off. Still humiliation onto her. Still expect her to hold bitterness. But Raven has rewritten that story. She got revenge with a national. She became a first-round. She made the WNBA. And now she's teammates with the very player whose gesture once helped define her public image. That's not humiliation. That's full circle. That's a powerful basketball story. But instead of appreciate, some people would rather manufacture conflict. Because conflict sells. And that's the uncomfortable truth about sports media right. Every relationship gets framed as drama. Every compliment gets analyzed for subtext. Every teammate dynamic gets turned into content. Did Angel Reese react? What does Dawn think? Is the locker room divided? Does Raven secretly prefer Clark? Is South Carolina? Most of it is nonsense. What's real is that Raven Johnson respects greatness. Caitlyn Clark respects Raven enough to help mentor her in camp. The Fever believe they can win with both. And if this partnership works, it could become one of the most dangerous backcourts in the WNBA. Clark's offense. Raven's defense. Clark's spacing. Raven's pressure. Clark's star power. Raven's that combination could be scary. Which means the real story here isn't controversy. It's opportunity. Raven Johnson may be walking into the perfect situation. A contender. An elite point guard to learn beside. Former South Carolina teammates like Aaliyah Boston around her. A coaching staff that values defense. A fan base desperate for a title. If she embraces the role, this could launch her career. And if she and Caitlyn build chemistry, the same people trying to pit them against each other now will be them win together. That would be the ultimate irony. The player once mocked for being waved off by Caitlyn Clark, helping Caitlyn Clark win championship. That's the kind of sports storyline Hollywood. But before any of that can happen, the noise has to stop. Because if women's basketball wants to keep growing, the culture around it has to mature. Criticism is part of sport. Debate is part of sport. Rivalries are part of sport. Harassment isn't. Racist abuse isn't. Attacking players for respecting teammates isn't. turning every interaction into tribal warfare, and deserves better than that. She's earned the right to define her own not be trapped in narratives fans created for her. So now the pressure shifts. Not to Ray, not to Kate, not to Dawn, not to Ain, but to the fan culture surrounding the sport. Can people appreciate competition without creating hate? Can they support stars without demonizing others? Can they let players evolve beyond old narratives? Because Raven Johnson already has. And if the basketball world catches it may realize this entire controversy was never controversy at all. Just key. Showing respect to another great player. While the internet lost its mind. And that might be the clearest sign that the biggest threat to women's basketball right now isn't rival teams. It's the toxicity surrounding the conversation.